At 7 p.m., we'll call the meeting to order. Supervisor Wells, would you lead us in invocation, please, sir?
I will, thank you. Let us pray. Lord, we ask for your blessing on Frederick County, our country, and your world. 18 years ago today, on 9/11, we witnessed evil at work, but we also saw your everlasting love, which reminds us that good, you, God, will always triumph over evil. Our prayers to all of our first responders, service personnel, and those in harm's way. Our prayers to all those who are suffering with pain and loss. We ask that you continue to share your love, your guidance, and your comfort on each of us. May God bless each of us, one and all, and may God bless America. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Chairman Lofton, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Would you stand and face the flag and join me in our pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
Not from staff, Mr. Chairman.
Board like to handle the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve is presented. A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We'll adopt the agenda as presented. Consent agenda. How would the board like to handle that one?
Citizen comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I want to do the consent.
No citizen comments, sir.
Saw it. Go ahead.
Brenda Fristow.
Fristow, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Fristow, and I live in the Stonewall District. And I want to first thank you, Chairman DeHaven, and board members for serving our community. We do appreciate your time and effort on our behalf. I would like to comment on item 12 on tonight's agenda, Planning Commission Business, Planning Business 12A, request to schedule a joint work session with the Planning Commission on comprehensive plan amendments. In the reference memorandum, according to my interpretation, Director Ruddy cites two purposes for requesting this joint work session. Number one is to decide if CPPA number 02-09, Woodside Business Center, the Light property, warrants additional consideration and study for ultimate inclusion in the county's 2035 comprehensive plan. Number two, to receive feedback on what the board would like to see undertaken by the Planning Commission over the next several months. I spoke with Director Ruddy this afternoon to clarify this process. With regard to the additional consideration and study of CPPA number 02-09, I request that you deny the request to include this in further study. The CPPC reviewed this application at two different meetings and did not recommend sending the request forward. It is my understanding that Carmoose is seeking the purchase of this land for future mining activity. Ask yourself, what is the cost versus the benefit of even entertaining expanding the mining activity in Frederick County? If my information is correct, you have a benefit of approximately $200,000. Real estate and personal property taxes, no business license income. What is the cost? Safety of your citizens and children, air and water pollution, sound pollution, road congestion from heavy-duty trucks, a change in the landscape of Stonewall District from the existing rural setting to a moon landscape where nothing grows, and there is a 150-foot-tall mountain that keeps expanding in width, from green to black gravel. This one decision on item number 12 will place Carmoose one step closer to beginning this process. Again, I urge you to deny this request. If you wish to give feedback to the Planning and Development Department, you may do that at a later time or bring that up under a different agenda. Studies and planning sessions can be rescheduled without adding another look at the CPPA number 02-09. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
That's the only one.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, the consent agenda. Would the board like to handle that one?
Chairman,
Those are done.
I'd like to go and have it approved as presented.
Do what?
I'd like to go and have it approved as presented.
Okay, you're moving to,
Second.
and a second to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. We'll do a roll call because there's money in there. Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells. Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. All right. That will bring us to Board of Supervisors' comments. Are there any? Hearing none. Committee appointments, Northwestern Regional Jail Authority.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to reappoint Chris Tierney for a 4-year term.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Chris Tierney is reappointed for another 4-year term. Extension Leadership Council, Dr. Meadows is eligible and willing.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Meadows has done a great job, and he is eligible, and I'm glad to see he is willing to be reappointed, and so I would move to reappoint Dr. Robert Meadows to the Extension Leadership Council.
Motion to reappoint, is there a second?
Sir, second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Dr. Meadows reappointed, and we certainly appreciate his service there. Finance Committee business. Supervisor Slaughter.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met in August. Items number 1, 4, 7, 8, and 9 were approved on the committee's consent agenda, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 2, the sheriff requests a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $400. The amount represents payment for a ballistic vest. No local funds required. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 3 are all carry forwards from the Public Works Director. Item number A, Shawnee Land Fund Supplemental Appropriation not to exceed $151,300.55 for ongoing road improvements. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Second.
Heard the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item B, under number 3, the general fund supplemental appropriation not to exceed $23,890.24 for animal shelter, spay, neuter, and new building design funds. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item C, under number 3, general fund supplemental appropriation not to exceed $337,656.54 for ongoing refuge projects, which include Stevenson, Albin, and Middletown convenience sites, and costs associated with increased hauling rates and the recycling program. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item D, landfill supplemental appropriation not to exceed $1,284,579.55 for ongoing landfill projects, including Phase 3 Cell A rock removal. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
And is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
The Winchester Regional Airport Authority Executive Director, item number 5, request an airport capital fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,550,000. This amount represents bond proceeds for the purchase of a hangar facility and associated projects. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 6, the Winchester Regional Airport Authority Executive Director requests an airport fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $37,000 and a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $27,750. These amounts represent projected debt service for fiscal year 2020 and the county's local share. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 10, the Fire and Rescue Chief requests a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $257,018.69 to assist the Winchester City Fire and Rescue in completing the burn building replacement project. This item has been endorsed by the Public Safety Committee. Local funds are required. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and motion carries.
Item number 11, the Finance Audit Committee Charter adopted by the Board of Supervisors requires an annual review and reassessment. The committee recommends approval of the charter with no changes, and I would so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 12, Supervisor Trout is requesting the county to consider donating to the Virginia War Memorial Foundation. The committee recommends denial, and I would so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for denial. Is there any discussion?
Is this in question? I don't think I've been on board. We've made donations before like that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. For we're the organization, but there are millions of them out there.
I understand. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Further discussion?
Mr. Wells, I was just going to say, we received the email, and I just wanted us to look into it. That was
Okay.
why it went before the committee.
Okay.
All right.
I don't mind looking into it. That'd be fine. Okay.
Further discussion? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Okay, and then there was one last item. I wanted to recognize the Finance Committee for their recent acknowledgement of the award for the CAFR and also the PAFR. It was the 13th year for the PAFR receiving the award, and 33 years for receiving the award for the CAFR. So outstanding job to the Finance Department, and I just want to say thank you. You certainly make our job much easier.
Yes, and something we're all very proud of. Well done. Thank you.
And that would conclude my report, sir.
Thank you. So that'll bring us to, I'm sorry, I missed one. Is fee schedule? We approve that.
That's under Public Works.
Thank you. So that brings us to a public hearing, ordinance to provide implementation of Federal Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of 2014.
Mr. Chairman, we need to deal with the Public Works Committee.
I'm sorry, do what?
We need to deal with number
Public
9B.
Works Committee, okay, that's the one I had. Yeah, okay.
Approval of the fee schedule.
Yeah, that's what I just asked.
But it wasn't under Finance.
Right.
I'm sorry?
It wasn't under Finance, it's under Public Works.
Yeah.
Right.
So is anyone presenting?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor McCarthy?
on behalf of the Public Works Committee, I would move for approval of the submitted fee schedule for Fire Prevention Code.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second. Mr. Chairman.
And the second, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Dunn?
I have some concerns on the fee schedule per se. Right now, businesses go, and the fire marshal has gone and can inspect with his current capability. There's about 1,400 companies, businesses in the county. They've done approximately half of that, 700. Before we go into a fee schedule, I'd like to see the rest of the county businesses inspected, see what the issues are. There have been 10 fires, approximately out of 1,400 on a yearly basis. So I'm not keen on this at the moment, and would ask that we delete this.
Okay. Is there any other discussion, anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor McCarthy?
I raised at the Public Works Committee some concerns. The first thing I would say is this isn't a vote to empower the fire department to do inspections. They're currently empowered to do those inspections, and they're doing inspections. In our conversations with the fire department staff, they indicated that they currently have the staff necessary to carry out the code as it's written, so this doesn't add any additional personnel in order to carry out the inspections. Also, when asked whether or not they had the budget in order to carry out these inspections for this year, they indicated that they do. Similar to Supervisor Dunn, I'd like to see us move forward this year with expanding those inspections if we truly do have the staff to do it. And then take this up as more of a budget discussion item. Is it something that we need to look at what the actual cost will be as far as do we need additional manpower in order to carry it out before we sort of submit an arbitrary fee? Another concern that's been brought up by several business owners in my district is that at the lowest end of this fee schedule, there's a $50 fee for small businesses. As part of this plan, the treasurer's office would be expected to generate sort of a tax bill that would be sent out to those businesses to collect, which would eat into that $50 fee. So the question is, are we really taxing small businesses a $50 fee in order to pay for the treasurer to send them a bill for a $50 fee? So the question is it really appropriate at that level to be charging a fee for this? So I'd like for us to sort of expand this, use this as a year to sort of see how things go before we implemented a fee schedule.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be also very worthwhile if we took a year to educate the public as to what is required in the fire inspection process, so that it is a goodwill measure about going into a business and saying if your fire extinguisher needs to be here or you need exit lights, that type of thing, that we take this as a measure of an educational process the first year and then evaluate the scheduling fees the second year. So I don't know if that needs to be an amendment to our motion, but if it does, I would like to offer that.
Further discussion? Supervisor Lofton?
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Supervisor McCarthy has pointed out, the Public Works Committee has discussed this several times, and I believe that we should be committed. The Fire Prevention Code is there for the safety of not only the people working in the building, the people who are visiting the building. And I think it's just a cost of business that has to be borne by the business that have these inspections done to make sure that the general public and their workers are safe. And as you pointed out, this puts that expense on the business and not on the taxpayer. I think Mr. Wells emphasized that fact in the Public Works Committee meeting very well, I think.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Supervisor Dunn?
Mr. Lofton, I'm empathetic with your situation, but remember, businesses go and pay taxes. They pay real estate taxes, they pay gross receipt taxes, they pay machinery and tools taxes, so they're already paying taxes. We all want public safety, but I think that the tax revenue that's being generated over the course of the next year would allow the fire marshal to go and do his job without imposing additional fees at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor McCarthy.
I would just reiterate that it was the fire department that said they have the money, the facilities, the time and manpower in order to get the inspections done. They're currently empowered to do it. So I'm not opposed to having a fee schedule in place, but like Supervisor Slaughter had mentioned, I think it would be wise before we sort of start sending out tax bills to residents for an inspection that they weren't necessarily expecting, that we take a year to start to expand the project, educate the public, find out what the real cost of the project is as we expand it before we determine what that fee schedule should be implemented. So I'm not opposed to having a fee schedule at some point, but at this point, if we have the manpower and we have the facility to get it done, then I think we should use our resources this year to get those inspections done. So this isn't a matter of implementing a safety measure. The safety measure has already been implemented. This is whether or not to pay into a system to cover that, and my understanding is we already have the funds and the manpower to do it. So to take 1 year to ease our way into this, it's not like these inspections aren't going to happen. They're empowered to do it. They're going to happen. They're already happening. So I don't want there to be some obfuscation as to what this vote is about. This isn't about whether or not we support fire safety. We all do, and we're already doing that. This is about, do we charge an extra fee on top of the inspections that are already being done?
I agree. This is the right thing to do. We will monitor it, amend it if necessary, as we have to all these types of things. I just think the best way also to help them understand is to have the person there at their business. This is by far the right approach. It also really helps that we do these kinds of things in insurance premiums. Is there any further discussion? Motion is to forward for approve. Supervisor McCarthy.
No.
Supervisor Slaughter.
No.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye. Yes.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Nay.
Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries, and we will move forward. Thank you. All right, next is public hearing, ordinance implementing Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014.
I've got that one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is sort of a housekeeping exercise for the board. Tonight, you're being asked to consider an ordinance to provide for the implementation of the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014 and authorizing Frederick County's participation in the Shenandoah Valley Elected Officials Consortium under the auspices of the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board. The board has previously adopted versions of this agreement in 2006, 2012, and 2015. It's before you tonight because following a recent administrative audit of the agreement, several technical areas were identified which the old and existing agreement were deficient in. For example, specific clauses that the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act required to be in the agreement were omitted. Because this is a joint exercise of powers type agreement, it should be enacted by ordinance. What most localities have done is either approved it under consent or a motion, just a regular motion and second in absence of a public hearing. So the auditors require the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board to revise the agreement, and they retain legal counsel to complete those revisions. This is a federally funded program, and Page County serves as a fiscal agent for the program. I would note in the agreement itself that as a condition of the federal grant, the localities are financially responsible in the event the local Workforce Development Board were to misuse funds received under this grant. And in the event that any misuse were to occur, each participating locality would be responsible on a pro rata basis for the amount each locality benefited from the grant's program assistance. But I would point out that the agreement requires the consortium to ensure that the Workforce Development Board purchase insurance to cover any misuse of grant funds, which provides some protection to the localities. and the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board does hold insurance coverage in excess of the amount of funding they receive as a way to alleviate liability concerns of the participating localities. In the staff memo in your agenda packet, we sort of briefly outlined what benefits the Workforce Development Board have provided to Frederick County. Since June 30th of 2019, approximately $17,000 has been contributed to Frederick County companies through the Valley to Virginia Registered Apprenticeship Initiative, and they are working with 25 apprentices at five different companies. Approximately 4,270 individuals have gone through the Winchester, Virginia Career Work Center for employment services and support. And so because this agreement needs to be enacted by ordinance, a public hearing has been scheduled for tonight. And at the conclusion of the public hearing, staff is seeking board action on this proposed ordinance. And I would point out that Ms. Joan Holland with the Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board is present tonight if the board has any specific questions relative to that organization.
All right, sir, thank you. Questions of Mr. Tibbs? Anyone? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed ordinance adoption? Anyone at all? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. Would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chair.
I would move that we adopt the ordinance approval as presented tonight, and that we move forward.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
No?
Supervisor Slaughter?
No.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. The ordinance is adopted. That'll bring us to Planning Commission business, public hearing, conditional use permit 06-19, Landfall Lodge.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. This is a conditional use permit for a special event facility. The property is located at 350 Chestnut Grove Road in Winchester, and the property is identified with property identification numbers 30-A-50 and 30-A-50D in the Gainsborough Magisterial District. The property is presently zoned RA, which is our rural area zoning district. The current land use is residential and agricultural, with the total acreage being 188 acres, of which 150 acres is in a conservation easement. The proposed use is a special event facility for weddings, charity, and other similar type events. Directing your attention to the screen, the subject properties are outlined in blue. They're immediately north of Route 522 North and due east of Chestnut Grove Road. Going through the applicant's proposal, the subject properties are outlined in red and blue. The applicant resides on the premise in an existing single-family detached home. They plan to access the property only from Chestnut Grove Road for special event traffic, where the traffic will go around the existing residence, down the hill to the rear of the property, which includes several outbuildings, one of which is an enclosed barn that's used for the weddings, includes catering kitchen, restrooms, dance floor, and a bridal suite that can be used for getting ready by guests. They also use the outside of the property for various charity events, including fishing and outdoor weddings. There is a second entrance to the property, which is a shared access driveway that is restricted to private use, agricultural use, and use by the owners. It's not open for special event traffic. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission has recommended the following conditions: that all review agency comments shall be complied with at all times, that an illustrative sketch plan be submitted to and approved by Frederick County prior to the establishment of the use, that building permits would be required for any new buildings or structures associated with the special event facility, that special events would start no earlier than 8 a.m. and all events and related activities would conclude by midnight, that special events may accommodate up to and not to exceed 250 persons, that only the main entrance associated with the address 350 Chestnut Grove Road shall be open for special event traffic, and that all other entrances to the property should be gated for private, residential, and agricultural traffic only. They would also be allowed one monument-style sign with a sign area not to exceed 50 square feet and 10 feet in height, and that any expansion or modification of this use in the future would require the approval of a new conditional use permit. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this conditional use permit at their August 7th meeting, and following a public hearing this evening, staff is seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this CUP for a special event facility. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant, Mr. Lowell Henderson, representing the Landfall Lodge, is here this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of Mr. Klein, anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor McCarthy.
I don't have a question specifically for Mr. Klein, but if this is the appropriate time, I do have one question for Mr.
Sorry, what?
I have a question for Mr. Henderson, if this is the appropriate time.
Okay. We'll go. Anyone for Mr. Klein? Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Henderson. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Supervisor McCarthy has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. As part of this application, do you have any intention of building additional facilities on the property for the event center purposes?
No, not for the wedding event facility. We want to keep it small and the infrastructure's there. I might run out of room to store hay, so I might have to put another barn for hay storage. But as far as the event center, no.
And would you have any objection if this application or this vote was amended to say that any building built for the event center would require you to come back before this board to get approval under the CUP?
Oh, no problem at all.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions, anyone? Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
No, sir, out of respect for time, everything's pretty well laid out. Hopefully you have the support letters from the numerous individuals, and appreciate your time, appreciate what you all do for the county and your consideration of our CUP.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed conditional use permit? Anyone at all? Yes, ma'am. If we could have your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
My name is Jamie Marion, and the district I'm not 100% certain on.
It's okay.
So I apologize. Chairman and members of the board, good evening. My name is Jamie Marion, and just like last month at the Planning Commission meeting, I was here to speak on behalf of my parents, Lee and Betty Marion, the property owners since 2006 to 236 Chestnut Grove Road. My father has a terminal illness, and he's unable to be here this evening, so I feel very confidently speaking to you this evening as the executor of the estate and as their power of attorney. From last month's meeting until now, I've had the opportunity to go back and watch the footage from the meeting and truly listen to what was stated by everyone regarding the conditional use permit for Landfall Lodge. My brother and I, along with our parents, have discussed this matter several times, and there are a few things that I would like to revisit this evening as you prepare to make your final decision regarding the fate of this business, which ultimately impacts the surrounding neighbors. Mr. Klein showed the Planning Commission a map at last month's meeting depicting the residential driveway to the property owners. Anyone could clearly see the size of the property, which I believe both Mr. Klein and Mr. Henderson stated was 188 acres. Clearly, it has sustainable space and/or acreage to develop a wider primary access road, which ultimately would sustain more traffic. I would like to think that a profitable company and what appears to be a reputable venue would take a portion of the proceeds earned to further develop their business and their property. By doing so, I would also like to think that excavation and widening of the primary access road would be a considerable project to sustain their growth versus the burden of using our road, which includes agricultural needs. If the primary road of their property is not good enough for access, then I would have to say, I'm sorry. But this problem cannot become our problem as well. There appears to be a tremendous investment in the property to allow this business, so again, I would think that investing more of their money and bringing their primary access road up to standards would be a considerable option instead of trying to take the easy route and burdening us, our property, and our road for their benefit.
Speaking of finances, and while their finances are none of our concern, I can't help but feel confused and conflicted when Mr. Henderson stated to the Planning Commission, and I quote, "While it hasn't been a financial burden on my wife and I, one of our concerns and our goals and priority is for their 4 children, grandchildren, and future generations to receive income to offset the cost to maintain the property." Further on, Mr. Henderson stated, and I quote again, "It was $16,000 to $18,000 cost to place the farm in the conservation easement, but producing hay, cutting firewood, timber, and boarding horses might bring in enough revenue to pay for taxes and insurance, but is not enough to pay for the upkeep of all the buildings and the roads." Finally, and quoting one last time regarding the finances, in 2016, they were asked to rent their barn. Costs were going up. It was a great opportunity to offset the costs. Is that my time?
You go ahead and conclude.
Thank you. So again, their finances are not our concern, but it can be concluded when reading between the lines that events, weddings, et cetera, are in fact needed to maintain and sustain this property. With that, they disclose that they have a selective clientele in which each applicant goes through a rigorous application process, and if they don't meet their guidelines, they don't rent to them. I hardly doubt a growing business and a business of this size would turn away paying individuals or any charitable event that would positively promote their business. So what is our goal as a neighbor? What would we like to see happen? We have 2 objectives in mind, and we are hoping the board will take the following into consideration. First, would the board please consider as an additional condition for approval that all traffic non-related to scheduled event on the day, i.e. renter, farming, and any other traffic be required to access the property via 350 Chestnut Grove Road so that the gate maintains to be locked at all times. Otherwise, it will always be an excuse if the gate is left unlocked with no recourse other than continued excuses. By requiring this as an additional condition for approval, you will always know when they are in violation. It would be more clear and evident instead of always fighting excuses and empty promises that it'll be fixed next time. Second, there is a lot of event traffic that accesses the road generally a few days or even a week before a scheduled event. We are again asking to please make it a condition for approval that any event party traffic, regardless of access timeframes, must access through 350 Chestnut Grove Road. Third, would the board please make an additional condition for approval that all commercial and heavy equipment, regardless if it's for residential or commercial purposes, must enter and access via 350 Chestnut Grove Road. Their use of dump trucks, tractors, trailers, and other heavy equipment is damaging our property for their commercial use and benefit. Just to give you an example, one dump truck can haul 17 tons of gravel. There were 10 dump trucks at one time on one particular day delivering gravel in which our road took a hit. VDOT finally installed a culvert on our road, and it's only a matter of time before that cracks or collapses. Then what? I believe it's only...
You need to conclude. I'll
Okay.
give you an opportunity after others have had an opportunity if you'd like to come back and finish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board of members of the board. My name is Corey Hammonds, and I own the property known as Black Smoke Farm, located at 240 Chestnut Grove Road. The entire north portion of my property borders the south portion of Landfall Farm. The lodge sits less than 400 feet from where I plan to build my house and will be directly above it. As my property is located significantly closer to the lodge, other than other adjoining properties, if anyone would have a concern, it'd be me. However, I do not. There are numerous reasons why, but the primary one is the farm is in a conservation easement. I know that the view from my back deck of my future house will never change. That as long as I live there, I'll never have to worry about a developer putting in dozens of homes. It'll remain pristine. Now for the past year and a half, I've rented the cottage on the farm, so I'm aware of the activities held at the lodge. I try to volunteer as many of the charity events as there are, a great opportunity to meet some wonderful people and to support a great cause. As I see it, any perceived inconvenience for a dozen or so days out of the year is a small price to pay for the incredible peace and serenity I enjoy the remaining 340 to 350 days. In addition, Lowell and Audie have been wonderful landlords, and I know will be fantastic neighbors. I can't think of a better place in Frederick County to live and raise a family, and I'm extremely fortunate. Having shared my story, I hope you guys will approve their conditional use permit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to comment? Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board of Directors. I am Betty Marion. I am the resident that lives on 236 Chestnut Grove Road. Areas where I want to retouch on the last meeting of August the 7th.
Ma'am, go ahead, pull
sorry.
it down. There you go. Good job. Well done. Thank you.
It doesn't pay to be short. But anyway, I want to make sure that all traffic for the Landfall Lodge goes through 350 entrance, even prior days to the event gates to be locked for Landfall Lodge for delivery of all equipment for the event, truck, grills, anything used for the event. Gate remains locked for access during the time of the event and for the house also rented down there. If 350 Road is not up to par for the traffic that they're receiving, that it needs to be so. You know, you shouldn't inflict it on your neighbors. He did not. He stated that he had notified the neighbors of events happening. I have one letter here that was dated back in April 11th, 2013, that he had notified, that's the only letter I've ever gotten, that he was having an event down there, which was on Memorial Day weekend, and he expected 300 people to be down there. So that's a lot of people coming down our road. I mean, I clearly agree it's an easy access from my house straight down there versus them going around the curve and going in the 350 exit. But, you know, it just, I just don't think it's fair. Also, I want to show you some pictures also of the road that you all can see, and also the heavy equipment. Just recently, this truck here weighing 1,700 tons came through there the other day to go down to put gravel on Landfall Lodge, because I even talked to the driver, and he told me that he was going down there to deliver gravel. And 17 ton is a lot to come across that little culvert that VDOT put in our driveway and didn't charge anything. The culvert needed to be put in because of the water backup from residents across the street. Again, my husband is disabled. The road needs to be at access all the time for emergency medical teams to access us. But clearly, I think that it needs to be, everything goes through 350 entrance for all the activities down there. If I could approach the bench to show you this letter.
If you would leave those with Mr. Tibbs, he'll pass them down for you.
Okay.
And you can collect them there at the end of the meeting.
Okay. That's basically, you know, all I have to say. And I think my daughter and my son has done a wonderful job of being so concerned about this property. We moved there in 2006 and lived there ever since. And we thought we were moving to a rural area that we wouldn't have this. And I love my home, and I would hate to force to be sell it just because I cannot stand this. So with further ado, I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank
but I do
you.
think that the gate needs to be locked at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment concerning this proposed CUP? Anyone? Yes, sir?
Am I allowed to make a clarification?
Not yet, sir. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Ma'am, if you'd like to finish your comments, you're welcome to come forward and do that. Please try to limit them to 3 minutes.
From where I left off, the above considerations would eliminate our concerns at any given point, the need for emergency personnel vehicles to access our road, and with our ailing father or any other individual needing medical assistance. Mr. Henderson and two others alluded to how much this business contributes to the community, families, and the youth, whether it being in the form of scholarships or, as Mr. Henderson pointed out, the benefits of a single mother giving her children the opportunity to fish at zero cost to them. Their charitable works for NW Works in the Evans home. My family and I think what they are doing is great. It's wonderful. Don't get us wrong, please. In fact, it's commendable what they are doing to better the lives of those in our community. But their challenges of having this business cannot become our problem, nor should it interfere with our property for their benefit. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that prior to this business becoming successful and thriving, we never had any issues on our old country road that is one single lane. For 13 years, my parents have loved, enjoyed, and invested into their property, and until the last couple years, they have loathed the events that Landfall Lodge hosts as it interrupts their lives, living conditions, and their level of comfort and well-being. The road has been a significant stressor for us, and we are hoping that you will consider our proposed conditions before final approval is given. I am thankful for your time, and once again, thank you for listening to my concerns.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Henderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The viewing public can't hear you from
Oh,
back there.
okay. Sorry
So
about
now,
that.
Also adjust that for me, please. You
Okay.
have to get really physical with it. Push it on up there. There you go.
Just to clarify on the gate scenario, as Corey mentioned, we do have a rental house that's been a rental house there for decades upon decades, and the gate is right at the edge of the property. I will close it during events if necessary, but traffic for the event won't even make it to the gate that goes by the Marion's property because it will be blocked off probably about 50 yards prior to even going to that access road. And as far as I also have my renters that need to come and go. Now, as far as that letter I had stated, going back to August 13th, April 13th, that was prior to the first Hunter Crane Memorial event. We, in fact, had close to 450 people attend that memorial in tribute to Hunter Crane. We parked everybody up top, but as trying to be a good neighbor, I advised all my neighbors that we were having this event. We had people checking in, and we only had approximately a dozen cars come in that way. All the traffic came in through the 350 Chestnut Grove Road. So I just wanted to make clarification on those 2 points.
Thank you, sir.
Can we ask a question?
No
We can't at
question
this-
and answer?
Not at this time, right?
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to comment concerning this proposed CUP? Anyone? Anyone at all? And we'll close the public hearing. Would you like to ask a question
No, let's go.
of Mr. Henderson?
No, let's go ahead and I'll clarify as we go along.
Okay. All right, how would the board, this is Gainsborough.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor McCarthy.
I'd like to move for approval of the application with one additional condition, which would be that no additional new buildings or structures be built without reapplication for a new conditional use permit.
All right, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone?
If I could, Mr. McCarthy, the 350, I didn't get a chance to see that, and that's what I was going to ask, but I'm sure you're familiar with that. Is that's the primary road, that is the road that will be used? Am I correct with that?
That's my understanding. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, all right.
Further discussion, anyone? Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. The CUP is approved with the additional condition. All right, that'll bring us to a public hearing, rezoning 0219 of CP Ventures. Ms. Perkins, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to rezone 1.04 acres from the B2 Business General District to the B3 Industrial Transition District with proffers. Now, the subject property is located on the south side of Route 11 and northeast side of Amico Lane. And if I can direct you to the screen on your left, for reference purposes, you have Martinsburg Pike, Route 11, Amico Lane, and then Interstate 81, and the subject property is outlined in pink on this map. Now, the subject property was part of a rezoning that was approved back in 2016, which rezoned a split zone piece of property, B2, B3, to the B2 district with proffers. And the piece that we're talking about tonight is that front corner, which is the 1.04 acres, which is now parcel 48E. So the primary change that they're requesting is the zoning change from the B2 to the B3, but the applicant also proposes two proffer revisions other than the zoning. First is to remove the metal building prohibition that was originally proposed, and they're also removing the SCADA system proffer. I would note that both of those proffers will still pertain to the remainder of the property that was rezoned back in 2016. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of this rezoning at their August 7th meeting, and tonight, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a decision from the board on this request. I would be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. Evan White with Greenway Engineering is here on behalf of the application.
Thank you. Questions of Ms. Perkins, anyone? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wyatt, is there anything you'd like to add, sir? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering. Just to give a little context for the request this evening, as Candace said, in 2016, as you all know, we rezoned the property to B2. The property owner has had an opportunity to work with a prospective purchaser that will be doing an automotive battery and tire service facility, and staff identified that through your SIC code as requiring B3 zoning, which is the reason we're here. The proffers that were provided in 2016, if you're familiar with the site, some of them have been already implemented, some of them are ongoing. And then another change that's occurred since the original rezoning that was approved was that working with Frederick Water, we were able to move away from a pump station situation to a gravity sewer line, which obviously is beneficial to both Frederick Water and the applicant, so that's being installed. The basis of the metal building proffer removal, I will read it to you how it was written in 2016. And it says, the owner hereby proffers to prohibit metal building construction on the property. So the prospect that the owner is working with in this particular application had questioned what that actually meant, how it would be defined and interpreted. And the reason is because the building that they're doing, like most commercial buildings, is the block and type construction, but there might be some metal components to it, whether it's a roof system or it might be an architectural feature or a bay door, and they did not want that to be problematic. So the owner asked us to drop that from the proffer. That issue was raised by Supervisor McCann-Slaughter, and we talked about it, and we think that it would be appropriate to reinsert that proffer into the action that you're considering tonight, but with rewording, and if I may, we would like to have it say, the owner hereby proffers to prohibit the construction of metal buildings on the property. However, buildings shall be permitted to have metal roofs, metal architectural and ornamental features and accents, and metal bay doors. So in essence, you're still ruling out the potential of like a standard type Butler building, but if there's an architectural system or something that is kind of more modern, so to speak, that doesn't preclude that. So if it pleases the board, we would be willing to add that in as proffer A2 under the land use restrictions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the boards might have.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
appreciate the attempt to reinsert the prohibition on the metal buildings. The term architectural feature, though, could be just as anomalous as the term a metal building. Would something to the effect of, but that the building shall not be substantially clad in metal, would that be acceptable to your client?
Yeah, the idea, however we get there, because we hopefully need to get there this evening, is to go ahead and commit to what most of us would perceive when we think of a metal building, but trying not to get into the minutia of a definition that 7 different people might have a different idea. So we thought it was safest to include metal roofs, architectural and ornamental features and accents, and bay doors, particularly for this use. Bay doors is important. But if there's a better way to say that, we're certainly interested.
Yeah, I like what you've proposed with the addition of not substantially clad, because if we just leave it as an architectural element, I think that opens up to the question, is a entirely metal-clad building, is that an architectural element for that building? So I think as long as we can clarify that, I would appreciate that.
We would be fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Other questions of Mr. Wyatt, anyone? All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed rezoning? Anyone? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Mrs. Stonewall.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to approve rezoning 02-19 for CB Ventures LLC with the updated language regarding the metal building and also the language that Supervisor McCarthy offered to address the cladding of the building.
All right, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries, and the rezoning is approved. All right, that will bring us to a request to schedule a work session.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be very brief and recognize that the request is to schedule a work session with the Planning Commission and Comprehensive Plans and Programs Committee to discuss this year's one application for a CPPA amendment, which is the Woodside Business Center. So staff has proposed a date which would be preferable, hopefully before the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which is on September the 25th, or at another date that the board may find more favorable. But in suggesting that date, that is when we would ideally like to participate in that work session with the Board of Supervisors and discuss the CPPA amendment that is in front of us in this annual process.
So you're proposing the 25th?
Yes, sir, that would be immediately before the board meeting, potentially at 6 p.m.
Prior to. Go ahead, Supervisor Lofton.
I just have a question, Mr. Ruddy. Do you believe that an hour is going to be adequate to go over the points you have to make in discussion? 25th suits me. I just wonder if that hour time frame is going to be adequate.
As you can see, what was suggested, obviously we have a CPPA amendment to deal with. In addition, it is a good opportunity always if the Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors would like to discuss any other items that may be out there. And of course, the memo suggests some that may be worthy of discussion, but we're of course looking to the board to see if there's anything of interest to the board. We felt an hour would be appropriate, but we would be certainly willing and able to go longer than that if the board desired.
Mr. Chair.
Suggestion?
I would just recommend an extra 30 minutes, maybe 5:30, and that gives us time, a break between this discussion and the regular board meeting.
I
Mr.
agree
Chairman.
with that. I think that's a good idea. Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Supervisor Trout.
weren't we planning on having a closed session on September the 25th, which would be a conflict?
We don't know yet, but we would still have time.
I'm just saying, we may want
What is
to,
your schedule these days?
well, my schedule's horrific, so.
Well, I'm asking because we haven't
I will
refreshed
not be
since
there
school
Septem-
started.
I will not be there September 25th regardless, so it's irrelevant.
Thank you. All right,
Mr. Chairman?
other Supervisor Dunn.
Instead of being the 25th, a week from now was your alternative, Mr. Ruddy. And like Mr. Lofton said, I feel constrained on an hour time, so if it's possible to have it an hour and a half prior to that next Wednesday meeting, start at 5 or start at 4:30, gives us a chance, because you have a number of items here, an updated Northeast Plan, access roads, et cetera. So there's a number of items here that if we're going to have an in-depth conversation, I don't think you're going to get it done in such a short time.
Are you suggesting September 18th, as in next week?
Yes, ma'am.
We could also, again, depending on the board's future schedule too, we could also look a little farther out if that's appropriate. I do know that the Planning Commission has a regularly scheduled meeting at which they have available time. However, I also know that there's a meeting with the Shenandoah Valley Electric Company a little earlier that evening, which may present a conflict to some. So there may well be another date that we could look at in the future with the Board of Supervisors.
All right, so we're talking about a work session. It's been requested by staff. We do have the annual opportunity, someone taking advantage of that. So we do need to get an answer. What's the board's pleasure? 5:30 on the 25th?
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation for 5:30 on the September 25th.
Do you want to attend?
5:30 on September the 25th?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir?
If there's a possibility to include Supervisor Trout, I mean, if she has a conflict, then I'll look for a date
She
that...
wouldn't be here at all, so she won't be here for the board meeting either.
But do you want to find another time which you can?
If that's okay with everyone else, but.
Have a motion. Did we get a second?
No, not yet.
I'm sorry?
Not
Second.
yet.
Okay, now we have a second.
There you go.
Go ahead, Supervisor Trout, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I can't be there September 25th. So if you would like to schedule it then, that's fine with me. I just won't attend.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion.
Second.
Further discussion.
If we're going to do it on the 25th, I'd like to do it like, 5 o'clock.
If there's no further discussion, Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye, motion carries. We will meet on the 25th for your work session at 5:30.
Thank you, sir.
And if need be, we can reschedule additional if we need to. Does that work?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board liaison reports, are there any?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Wells.
The Parks and Recreation Committee met this week, and has been announced there's some new ball fields being built and new complex. And Parks and Recreation Department is seeking public input for names and name suggestions for these new ballparks. They're located on Stevenson Road in Stevenson, Virginia. They're going to replace the current ball fields located at Clearbrook. So comments and suggestions are welcome, and they're encouraging folks to get online on Parks and Recreation, make your comments, suggest names and so forth. So please get involved and take your opportunity to name the ball fields. Thank you very much.
Actually, name the park.
Name the park, excuse me.
Thank you.
I should be, yes.
So we're looking for the community's help
Parks
in
are going to keep
naming
the names.
our new park.
New park, I'm sorry. You're exactly right.
Well done.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
sir.
Anyone else? Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, at the Social Services Board meeting Tuesday, the Director, Tammy Green, shared some information with us that I thought was worth passing on. As you know, they do a yeoman's job, and the state actually grades them on a number of items in which they're supposed to perform. And one item that is particularly stuck out in my mind that I would like to thank the Social Service Department, their staff, you do a great job, and that is the number of ongoing cases error rate was 0% for Frederick County this last quarter. So kudos to the Social Service Department and all that staff for the great job that they continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's phenomenal. It's almost impossible to do. Well done. Anyone else? Liaison reports? Anyone? All right, that'll bring us to the portion of our meeting for citizen comments regarding any topic of local interest. If you would, if you'd come to the podium, give us your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, please. Would anyone like to bring comments to the board? Ms. Fristow?
Hello, it's me again. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
Up just a little bit, Ms.
Thank you. Again, I'm Brenda Fristow, and I live on Brucetown Road in Stonewall District. I would like to ask that the board consider using a window of opportunity opened by a potential disaster to place added restrictions on the buffer distance for the property, the ball fields, that will be returned to Carmoose Lime and Stone when the lease is up in November. According to the application with the Virginia Department of Mining, the buffer will be 25 feet from the mining activity beside the park. I propose that given the recent developments of the county impose a stricter buffer area beside Clearbrook Park that would increase this to 725 feet. On September 3rd, projectile fragment rocks from a failed blasting operation at the Carmoose site across from Stonewall Elementary School reached the school and adjacent properties. The Star noted that these rock fragments traveled 700 feet. While Carmoose is under the direct authority of the Virginia Department of Mining, the safety and well-being of the children and adults in this county are under your authority. In mid-July, Art Bragg, my husband, and myself reached out to Carmoose and met with Mr. Thompson, the plant manager, and Mr. McCotch, the area operations manager, with 13 items of concern. A copy of this list was emailed to many of you. Item number 5 on that July meeting list read, change the blasting schedule to either before 8 a.m. in the morning or after 4 p.m. Monday through Friday to protect the children. I noted that the road is closed, Route 11. However, the children are still on the playground when they blast every day, Monday through Friday. The written Carmoose response, and I quote, no to changing the blasting schedule. Our schedule is limited to daylight hours, and we will work in direct communications with the closest neighbors and the school, end quote. Was the board aware that Clearbrook Park is on a lockdown 5 days a week when Carmoose blast? Yes, I mean lockdown. No one goes into the park and no one can come out. I have seen the dust cloud from the blasting at the current location in many cases, which leaves zero visibility to park attendees. What is going to happen when mining begins on the ball field area? I understand a 25-foot buffer is proposed. Clearly, this is not acceptable. I propose the county impose a 725-foot buffer area given the latest blasting accident. I've been working with Mr. Bibb and Mr. Hutchison of the Virginia Department of Minerals and Mining representatives for over a year. May I? I'm almost. Thank you. Trying to hold Carmoose accountable to the governing regulations. We have a meeting with Senator Jill Vogel on November 14th to request that she introduce legislation that prevents another jurisdiction from having to endure the reckless disregard to a community by building a 150-foot high and several football field wide debris mountain to ruin the landscape of a district. I end with a direct quote from Mr. Ian Kakara of Carmoose to me, quote, there is no incentive for us to change the entrance, the exit, add air monitors, get rid of the debris pile, or change blasting schedules, end quote. Maybe not, but there is much incentive for this board to extend the buffer to at least 725 feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything at all they'd like to share with the board? Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Victoria Kidd, and I live in Pembridge Heights in Shannon Trout's district. I am appreciative of this opportunity to speak. I have owned a business in the county for 10 years. I've lived in the county for about 12, 13 years before opening my business, the Hideaway Cafe downtown. I'm very proud to live here. I'm proud to be a Virginian, and I am very proud to participate in a number of community and civic organizations that do a lot of good in and around the county, including the Winchester Pride Committee, which leads me to the reason that I wanted to make a statement tonight on their behalf. Not on your agenda tonight, obviously, is the non-discrimination policy, but there are a good many people here behind me that are here in response to that. First, I want to applaud the Human Resources Committee for working to keep the area moving forward and to suggest policies that attract and retain talent and are in line with what has repeatedly been recognized with the best practices of municipalities across the country, as well as for commercial purposes, which is directly in my wheelhouse, obviously. Over 80% of the nation's commercial businesses have adopted such policies, so certainly there is an awful lot of data and information to support that it is indeed the best practices. But on a more personal level, I am here to speak to you tonight because as an individual, I have personally been fired from a job before for being a member of the LGBT community, and I can tell you that that is not something that I ever want anyone else to experience. It is very personable, it is very hurtful, and it is thankfully unnecessary because, as you know, there are other municipalities in the state that have these protections. Even the state government themselves have a similar non-discrimination policy that actually goes even further than this one did. So I would encourage the Human Resources Committee as well as the board to speak with and look into those policies at Alexandria, Arlington, for example, to see how they have implemented those practices to protect their existing talent and to retain that talent and to attract additional talent because LGBTQ people have an awful lot to offer this community. Diversity is important. Their abilities should be valued, and we believe that a non-discrimination policy is the best way to do that. We hope that the board will continue to work on this issue, that the most recent decision is not the conclusion of the issue, and we believe that policies can be enacted to make this a very vibrant and diversified and respectful community that ensures that persons such as myself that has a lot to offer continue to be proud to live here. And in conclusion, I just want to say I appreciate the work that you do and that we, as the Winchester Pride Committee, are willing and interested in helping with this issue in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You'll have to go way up with the microphone, sir.
I love this game, don't you?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for pointing me out, Chairman. My name is William Wright. I am from the Frederick County, I forget which district. I am also a bisexual male. I am a member of the newly formed We Matter Winchester support group. It is an LGBTQ support group, and I would also like to comment on the same policies that have just been rescinded. I would first like to I would like to mention that most of the information I got was from the Winchester Star, the article that was written about it, so thank you. First, I would like to thank Representative Shannon Trout for trying to keep the protections in place because no one should have to fear losing a government job because they are active military or they may be having a child, or if they are a member of the LGBTQ community. Protections related to a person's sexual orientation or gender identity are what were mentioned as the citing for the reason to remove the new policy because it violates a law that says the local government would be overstepping its bounds within the state government. Even though Alexandria and Arlington County have both successfully passed protections like the one that has just been pulled. Because most likely they, like many others, have learned that it shouldn't matter if a teacher is transgender, or if a secretary is gay, or even if a board supervisor was both. It matters if they can do what is needed for their position. Dave LaRock has a representative in our in our state has mentioned that he believes we shouldn't provide special rights or protections for anyone's chosen sexual habits. Me being bisexual is not a choice. It is what I am, and if I was working for the Frederick County government in any way, it would not be relevant to how well I can do my job. These are not special rights. These are the rights that any employee deserves under any job. I agree, we need to hire those that can do the best for the community, but being LGBTQ has nothing to do with that and should never be used as a reason to remove them from that job, and I ask that you consider placing those protections back on. Thank you. Any questions, I'd be willing to answer.
That we can't do, but thank you, sir. Appreciate your comment. We can't do questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Yes, ma'am.
I hope that's good enough.
Good, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Diana D. Cleveland, and I am also a member of the Winchester Celebration Pride event that we had. This was our second year to have this year, and we all think it went really well. There was no trouble, and it was just a great event. So I want to thank you all for letting me have the opportunity to speak. So with all due respect, I just have one question. Why are we, as residents of the Frederick County, and I am of the Red Bud District, why are we falling behind in the progressive movement to protect all individuals equally from discrimination? It would be nice that one day soon that we are all able to be equal with one another. And that's all I have to say. So it's less than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Reverend Mary Bohacek. I'm the pastor of Shenandoah Valley Metropolitan Community Church here in Winchester. I've been a resident of the Shawnee District for a year now. It is a wonderful and welcoming place in Winchester, and I am very pleased to be a new part of this community. However, I have gotten a lot of feedback from other clergy colleagues, other LGBTQ advocate colleagues that have said, why is your small rural county in Virginia making national news? I hate to tell you this, but I think we've done more damage by extending and rescinding a protection than by ever having offered it at all. I want to strongly encourage you and fervently pray that you will reconsider your rescinding, that you will evaluate how we can protect all of our constituents and to take away the divisions that we place on ourselves, because we all have the right to jobs, we all have the right to live in a community where we all have a voice. And I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our voice with you this evening and to encourage you and to remember that the world is watching what we are doing. So please act with the best intentions of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Brian Nuri. I'm a resident of the Opequon District and candidate for school board, in case anyone's watching. I was watching the news the other day on WDVM, and I saw Delegate Rock being interviewed about the events of last month's event. And to be quite honest with you, I think he has a point. We shouldn't protect people just because of the choices that they make. Referring to the sexual harassment policy that we have in Frederick County for the employment, religion, marital status, and veteran status are also protected statuses under the policy. So what would prevent, let's say, an atheist who works for the government, for the county government, to not want to work with a Christian? Or possibly a single man who doesn't want to work with a married woman? Those were choices that they made. Obviously, you can see the ridiculousness of my comment. I've read Jonathan Swift's modest proposal too. So basically what I'm trying to say is that we need to rescind what we rescinded last month, because the whole argument's really coming down to an argument between the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, and the vaunted Dillon Rule. which was originally established to prevent localities from enacting local taxes without the permission of the state government. However, lately, people like Delegate LaRocque have used it and abused it to prevent localities from enacting certain policies that go against his personal beliefs. I'm sorry, but personal beliefs don't have any standing when it comes to representing everyone. As has been said before, Arlington City, Alexandria, and the city of Charlottesville all protect in one way, shape, or form sexual orientation and gender identity. Just for clarification too, 17 jurisdictions in the state of West Virginia have the same protections that we rescinded last month, including Martinsburg, Charlestown, and Shepherdstown. Is West Virginia really more progressive than Virginia here? Marriage equality was passed in 2015. Even the EEOC in 2012 established that gender identity discrimination is prohibited because it counts as sexual discrimination, which under Title VII was already banned. In 2015, sexual orientation was also prohibited from being a point of discrimination, as it was considered sexual discrimination. I simply ask for us to think about the future, think about our community, and let's reconsider rescinding that policy. Because let's face it, we're a community. We need to accept all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. So my name's Amanda Kelly. I just moved into the Gainsborough district at the beginning of August, right when this started. I actually used to be one of Delegate LaRocque's constituents, and it's like I moved and he's still messing up my life. I think that the large majority of Americans don't even know that it's not unconstitutional to discriminate against people for their sexual orientation or their gender identity. Most people think that that's against the law. The fact that you offered it to people, even just happening now, is kind of way behind the times, and it should always have been. Whether it's a choice, whether it's not a choice, it's none of your employer's business. And people should not be afraid to lose their job just for living their life the way they want to, especially if it's not hurting anyone else. So I think that you definitely need to work on reoffering those protections to people. I've worked in a lot of different businesses. I've been a manager, and every single one of them, we're clearly trained that it's not okay to discriminate against customers, employees, anything like that. And these are all protections that your average everyday employer offers. For the government not to offer the same protections that your general store offers to its employees is a little ridiculous. So I think that it's definitely time to offer those. If other places are able to do it within Virginia, then you all can do it too, and I don't think it would be very hard to figure out. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Anyone? On any issue? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. My name is Tabitha Shanholzer. I am also a member of the LGBTQ support group, We Matter Winchester. I am a 50-plus year resident of Frederick County. I just moved in a year ago to Stevens City. And I'm just going to bring up a point. I am a transgendered woman, and I have over almost 40 years work experience in construction. And I have experienced being told, oh, I don't want to hire you because you're transgender. Well, I've managed companies and everything, and my viewpoint is when it comes to your employee, their sexual orientation or their gender identity should not really matter. What should matter is their abilities and the merits and everything, what they bring to the job. When I was managing a business, I'd much rather had a person that was there every day, gave 110%, did their work. I didn't care if their partner was the same gender or anything. That should not really matter. like I said, the employees should be based on the merits of their work ethics. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Anyone? Last call? We'll close the public comment portion, and we appreciate you coming and sharing. That will bring us to Board of Supervisors comments. Are there any?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn.
As chair of the HR committee, we got some additional information after we had initially had an HR committee meeting. So last month, I did vote to move it back to HR, and we're having now discussions with the HR director to find language that is going to be compatible with state law. So we are going to be bringing back the issue up. We'll address that issue. We did not have the policy discussion at the first meeting. We're going to have a much more in-depth policy discussion when we address this in the HR committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Anyone? Vice Chairman Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. We'll stand adjourned. We certainly thank everyone for their time, attention. Safe travels home.